Professor Rosen, you've predicted a boom in Chinese overseas direct investment, and you've said that the world needs to react to that. The world needs to prepare for that. How should the world react?
Well, for one thing, we have a lot of learning to do about what it means to have Chinese investors in our communities. So far, the reaction in many of the advanced economies has been one of trepidation and sort of ambivalence. On the one hand, we're glad to see money coming to our shores and creating jobs. On the other hand, we don't really know what Chinese companies are all about. Are they commercial entities? Are they somehow extensions of the Communist Party, whatnot? This is going to take some learning, some understanding. Our politicians are going to have to be sophisticated enough to know what's a question worth asking and what's just fanning the flames of misunderstanding when they react to these deals.
Many Australians, including some of our politicians, are concerned about Chinese direct investment, a very large-scale Chinese direct investment. They say that it's not in Australia's interests, particularly when that investment is being made by state-owned enterprises in our natural resources and agricultural production. What do you say to that?
Of course, that's what politicians do. They hone in on the big new shocks to the economy, and they tell us that they've got our interests at stake. But what we need to do is make sure that they can answer the question, what is the interest, whether it's Australian, American, or whoever else's, that's at stake. My preference is to test this against the consumer's welfare. Are Australian consumers going to be better off or worse off as a result of a Chinese firm coming in and making an investment? If it means that Australian companies are going to have to compete harder to keep their consumer base here at home, then isn't that good for the Australian consumer? I have no problem with competition as long as it happens in the presence of a fair marketplace and good regulators. Australia certainly has that. So beyond that, I don't really mind whether it's a state company or private company or otherwise, as long as we keep the consumer's welfare in mind.
How confident can we be that Chinese companies, particularly state-owned enterprises, are in fact driven by commercial interests rather than political or economic interests?
I don't think we're ultimately going to be able to answer that any more than we're able to answer whether French companies are. There's been a lot of talk about French firms and SOEs over the years as well. Again, at the end of the day, we look around, we see, say, Chinese investment in agribusiness. Are there other Australian agribusiness companies that are still profitable and able to compete in the marketplace? Are there other international companies that are still competing in the marketplace? If so, then we don't see the market being poisoned by the presence of a single Chinese firm. If that single Chinese firm, on the other hand, is building up 20, 30, 40% market share and other firms are starting to fall away from the game, then we have a competition policy problem. But again, this is the realm of competition policy. All OECD economies have a competition policy authority. Australia certainly does, a good one. And we don't have to say no to FDI just because we're concerned about how competition will work out later. That's for the competition authorities to make sure we're in the right place.
Australia has very good relations with the United States. It has very good relations with China. Given friction that does occur between China and the United States, are we going to find ourselves one day in the future having to choose between one or the other in terms of our relationships?
I hope not. I hope not. I mean, much depends on where China goes in this respect. I mean, you and I have a pretty good idea of what the U.S. is going to look like 10 years from now. It'll be more or less the same kind of political system, more or less the same kind of economy that you know of today. Australia, same deal. We have changes of political party. We tinker with our rules and laws and regulations at the margin. We change a few things, but we're capitalist democracies. We have been for centuries, and we will continue to be in the years ahead. China, on the other hand, is not such a clear-cut case. We don't know whether it'll continue to be a one-party authoritarian state, whether it'll continue to be a socialist market economy, and what that means to them in the future. So they're the one that's a bit of a variable, and we'll just have to see which way things go.